Well, friends, another day, another low-effort, easy content Star Trek list video. This time we're coming over to Screen Rant to learn all about the 10 aliens in Star Trek's next show, Explained. Now, if you're not aware, Star Trek Academy is the next upcoming show. About a week and a half ago, I think, at New York Comic-Con, they released another trailer for that, as well as the release date of January 15th of 2026, I suppose. We're almost there already. And there's going to be some new aliens and new combinations of aliens in this show, regardless of your thoughts on what the show is or how good it's going to be. We haven't seen it yet, so that remains to be seen. It does seem to be fairly divisive among fans. Kind of curious to see what these aliens are and who these people might be within the show. So if we come down here, this is written by John Orquiola, and we're going to talk about the 10 alien species. So let's not mince any words and get right to number one with Lanthanite Captain Nahla Ake, or Ake. This is Holly Hunter. For whatever reason, I always get Holly Hunter and Bonnie Hunt confused in my mind. This is Holly Hunter, right? Yes, Holly Hunter is a half Lanthanite. Lanthanites are extremely long-lived humanoid species introduced by Star Trek Strange New Worlds, played by Commander Pelia, who is Carol Kane, and she's approximately 5,000 years old. And by comparison, this version, the Holly Hunter, got the name correct again, is 422 years old. So just a mere baby, but this does raise some interesting, not conundrums, but story opportunities. We know in this series, Robert Picardo's hologram doctor is coming back to the show. We also know via Discovery there was that whole B word, the burn, all of that crap, which utterly devastated the entire, I was going to say quadrant, but the entire galaxy for the most part. So there was all sorts of hardship. This means she both lived through the burn, so she experienced life before and after this mega tragedy, and she also probably had dealings with the long-lived Robert Picardo doctor, which is potentially going to add some of the backstory and character flavor, as well as her relationship to other Starfleet characters. So nice to see them continuing the tradition of using their own characters, their own species creations. I feel like it was originally just kind of a copy of an El-Orien for the time travel episode way back in season 2 of Strange New Worlds. They probably just wanted somebody who was there in the 2010s, 2020s, whatever that time travel took back to, and in the future, so they could have that continuity of character. But if they can do something else with it, maybe even tie it into some of the TOS long-lived characters we saw back then, maybe it will actually feel a bit more integrated to the universe. I just hope they don't rely too heavily on bringing back the same character over and over and over again, species I should say, much like they did in Discovery with everything taking place in the galaxy involving a Kelpian, because that was the species they introduced to Star Trek canon. All right, next we have Darsha, Genesis Lythe. Okay, Starfleet Academy Cadet Genesis Lythe is a member of the Darsha race. Darsha is a new species introduced in Starfleet Academy who is humanoid in appearance. They have distinctive ridges above their eyes, as you can plainly see here, and probably some sort of ornamental jewelry, maybe similar to I was going to say benzonite, a Bajoran. The particular qualities and any abilities Darsha possess are yet to be seen in Star Trek. Whole stop, you don't need to just say Academy. Genesis, meanwhile, is the daughter of a Starfleet admiral, and her single-minded goal is to become a captain. So she's got some Starfleet aspirations because of her pedigree, and her species is fill in the blank with whatever they want to tell with the new interesting species. Then we have Kionian. I'm probably not going to pronounce a single thing correctly here. Darem Reymi. Starfleet Academy Cadet Darem Reymi is a Kionian, another new species representing the 32nd Century Federation in Starfleet Academy. Kionians appear human, and it's yet to be revealed if they have any particular abilities. Honestly, he looks like, he's just young Seth MacFarlane. So is he related to Ensign Rivers from Enterprise? Probably 100% certainty on that. There's no questions asked. Darem Reymi comes from a wealthy family that demands high achievement from the young cadet. Naturally competitive and athletic, Darem also wants to become a Starfleet captain. Everyone just wants to be captains. What is this, Star Trek Prodigy with Dahl all over again? Side note, I would actually have preferred this Starfleet Academy show to be a Prodigy continuation, but justice for Prodigy in all things. And he's driven by a desire to prove himself. All right, this is the one I'm probably the most interested about as far as what they're going to tell story-wise, and this is a Caskian, and Sam is the designation of this character. So Cadet Sam is the first Caskian in Starfleet Academy. Caskians are yet another new species introduced in Starfleet Academy, and Sam stands for Series Acclamation Male. Caskians are holographic beings, and Sam was programmed to be a young adult. Sam only comes online weeks before she enrolled in Starfleet Academy. As such, Sam is rather like a newborn. Everything is so fresh to her, and the Caskian brings absolutely no baggage. Well, frankly, most of these new species, even the ones like Lamponites, don't really have any baggage because they're relatively new, and if we have seen them, they've just had one person portray a small, tiny aspect of their character, similar to how Discovery brought back a one-time character from a species, I should say, in Captain Raynor from DS9. They had really no baggage because they were just a thing that exists that we knew nothing about. But I am interested in this whole newly minted artificial life. Is she like a hive mind? Is she similar to, like, I guess you could say a virtual version of Odo with the Great Link, where she goes out as her own independent, autonomous part of the collective, but when she comes back, she brings her experiences into the Great Holographic Link, or something like that. Interesting. If she's basically a newborn, she now takes the cake for Kes as far as being the youngest, potentially creepy older person relationship thing going on. So ideally, we're not going to pair her up with a 5,000-year-old Lanthanite because that could just be way too much. Why am I talking about something that has nothing to do with anything? Klingon! This is interesting. I thought this character was actually only going to be partially Klingon, but I guess we'll find out. Jaden Kraag is another Starfleet Academy cadet, and he is a Klingon, of course. Klingons have been in Star Trek since the saga began in the 1960s, and Jaden appears to be a 32nd century continuation of the most popular incarnation of the feared warrior race. So he's got, not quite TNG era. Well, I guess they started in the movies, but not quite classic 90s era Klingons, I guess you could say, but he's very similar compared to what was introduced or reintroduced in Discovery. And he has a little bit of the Kelvin-verse accoutrement, I guess, as far as I was going to say earring. What is that? That's an eye ring, eyebrow ring, double eyebrow ring. He does have an earring, so the jewelry from the Kelvin-verse. Remarkably, Jaden Kraag is on Starfleet Academy's sciences track to become a medical officer, which would likely place him under the tutelage of the Doctor. A Klingon who wants to become a doctor is a novel twist by Star Trek Starfleet Academy, which technically we did see Doctor Klingons way back in Enterprise. They're the ones who created the whole ridge problem to begin with, but I would have loved to see Worf in a blue uniform because he wore red, he wore gold, he never wore blue. Even in Parallels, not a single alternate universe contained a blue uniformed Worf. Betazoid. Tarima Sadal is a Betazoid, the empathic species. I'm pretty sure Betazoids are full telepaths, and the reason that Deanna Troi was an empath is because she was only half a Betazoid, thus making her not fully telepathic. Let's read on. Introduced by Star Trek The Next Generation's counselor Deanna Troi, the daughter of Beta Z's president Tarima and Caleb Mir are Starfleet I can't say the full word. Why does it have to be Star Trek Starfleet Academy? It's too much. Too many stars. Just call it Starfleet Academy or Star Trek Academy. Too many stars. Young lovers, which could be a forbidden romance, of course. Of course, we're going to have a forbidden Romeo and Juliet-esque romance in here. Betazoids can read the minds and emotions of others, but Tarima Sadal's abilities come with an alarming twist. Tarima appears to be more psychically powerful than other Betazoids. Worse, Sadal sometimes can't control her power, which could make her a threat in Star Trek: Starfleet Academy, period. Whew. I don't know why. I feel like that's just too long of a title, but that might just be a me problem. Emergency medical hologram. The Doctor. Interesting. So he's his own species now. The Doctor in Star Trek Starfleet Academy is the same EMH introduced in Star Trek Voyager. It's been confirmed he is the EMH, not the backup program from Living Witness, which would have actually made perfect sense for this show. based on the time period. However, it also implies that there might be a meeting of the original Doctor and the backup program in Academy. Doubt they'll actually tell that story unless this show goes multiple seasons, but I would very much be on board to see that. After serving as a mentor to Starfleet Academy cadets in Star Trek Prodigy, the best Star Trek in recent years in my opinion, the Doctor continues as an instructor and possible historian 800 years later in Star Trek: Starfleet Academy. If I say the colon, I feel like I can say it better. In Star Trek Academy's 32nd century, the Doctor has evolved beyond the need of an emitter to maintain his physical form, out of brute strength and mental capacity. I think therefore I can just hold myself together well, but the burden of 8 centuries of knowledge and enduring the deaths of his closest friends weighs on the EMH. The Doctor is also a mentor to Sam, a fellow holographic being, the Klingon Jem'Hadar hybrid, Lura Thok. That's like the one picture we keep getting from the side profile. I'm wondering if they're very proud about how she looks from the side and less so front on. Maybe not. Lura Thok is a half Klingon and half Jem'Hadar hybrid. Introduced in Star Trek DS9, the Jem'Hadar are the genetically engineered soldiers of the Dominion. They were bred for short lifespans and a dependence on Ketracel white, but they have evolved in 800 years. The cadet master of Starfleet Academy and first officer of the USS Athena. Lura Thok is a result of her Klingon and Jem'Hadar parents' breeding. This likely makes Thok doubly intimidating and fierce in combat. It will be fascinating for Star Trek Academy to explore what it means to be a Jem'Hadar / Klingon hybrid. A lot of people have been speaking out against this because, well, in Deep Space Nine, it was told that they couldn't give birth and there were no Jem'Hadar women and they were all just genetic, whatever. First of all, we're 800 years later, so who knows what's been figured out since then. I assume there's actually going to be reference in the show to some events that took place post DS9. And honestly, with the way they like to throw in fan service these days, I'm probably about 92% that's going to be a reference to, a great doctor of the time, Julian Bashir, came up with a way to make the genetic diversity of the Jem'Hadar revert to before they were clones so that they could actually reproduce on their own, something along those lines. I just have a feeling they're going to tie it back in that way and just move on. Plus, we saw in DS9 there were some Jem'Hadar that did not have the addiction to Ketracel white anymore, so maybe there's just some genetic anomalies out there we didn't know about. Digital Dean of Students. This is the newly announced thing that we didn't know before. Played by Stephen Colbert, at least the voice of Stephen Colbert. At New York Comic Con, talk show host and comedian. I don't know why I said comedian as in the female way. Comedian Stephen Colbert announced that he is voicing Star Trek Academy's Digital Dean of Students, DDoS. Interesting. Presumably, Colbert will only be heard and not seen in Academy, which he actually said in his little announcement he didn't have to go in the makeup chair, but I do wonder if they're going to throw in a minor appearance at some point, maybe a brief holographic appearance of him at the end or something like that. I feel like it would be a wasted opportunity not to include his face in some way, but that remains to be seen. Colbert's announcement joked that the Digital Dean of Students will make announcements, but the title DDoS hints at a more far-reaching administrative role in another form of artificial intelligence. So is he just more benevolent offshoot of Control or something like that? Who knows? Who's to say? And then we get up to the guy who's, I don't want to say been carrying a lot of the pedigree of this show, but somebody who's really been put foremost out front to be like, look at the guy we've got in our show here. Paul Giamatti, the Klingon Tellarite hybrid, Nus Braka, something like that. Season 1's recurring villain, Nus Braka, is another Klingon hybrid, a mix of a Klingon and a Tellarite. Like Klingons, the cantankerous and argumentative pig-like Tellarites were introduced in TOS in the 1960s. Nus Braka likely combines a Klingon's fighting prowess with a Tellarite's hostile nature, making Braka even more irascible as a combination of both species. Nus Braka's Klingon and Tellarite makeup contribute to why he's such a bad guy in Starfleet Academy. I suppose just on sheer star power and how much Paul Giamatti has wanted to be in Star Trek, how much he's wanted to play a Klingon in Star Trek, he's announced this over many years. This is probably going to be a role he enjoys, so he's definitely going to be giving it his all, and I'm curious how they will utilize him, because when we've brought in some seemingly heavy hitters in the past, I'm specifically thinking recently of season 3 of Picard, where we brought in Amanda Plummer to play Vadic, who was really fantastic in the role, just to get flung out of an airlock and kind of dispatched, and they brought in the real main villain later. Wasn't a big fan of that, so I'm hoping he's not just kind of a clever ploy and he gets thrown away 6 episodes in and the real villain shows their face. I want him to actually be something memorable in this series and not something that's just kind of a hook to get us in there, but he's not really something major at the end of the day. And is that the last one? I suppose it is. So, my friends, there you have it. 10 alien species, a couple of cheats in here, I would honestly say. I don't think the EMH really should have gotten his own thing, but they probably wanted to give it that nice round 10, so you can have a list of 10, because that's what the internet loves. Lists of 5 or 10. Are you interested in this show at all? Are you interested in these characters? Which one stands out the most to you out of all of them? To me, like I mentioned earlier, I think Sam is probably the most interesting to me. A lot of these other characters, first, the unknown alien species we have no backstory on. I don't know, because they didn't tell us jack about them, so what are we supposed to imply? The ones that are just kind of 2 species we already know in one, yes, that can provide an interesting exploration as far as the future of Star Trek, the Federation, Starfleet, whatever you want to call it. But as far as providing something brand new, it's probably just going to be more reinterpretations of the same. I'm curious to see the new stuff, I suppose, and hopefully they can do good new stories with new characters and the returning ones, and it doesn't devolve into just a lot of classroom stuff and a lot of feelings in hallways and things like that. I want this to actually be a fully fleshed show. They're putting a lot of effort, time, money, star power into this thing, so it seems like they have more faith in this show than just shoving it out there. Whether or not that turns out to be a good 20 episode 2 seasons, that remains to be seen. But these are the 10 alien species according to Screen Rant and what we're going to see. Leave all your thoughts down below. Like, share, subscribe, join, hype, do all those things. And until next time, computer end program.